Hello, hello, and welcome back. My name is Sinith War. Welcome in. Today, I am going to be reacting to a small section of Linus's Tech Group's news about some 3D printer stuff. As you've seen in my background, I do a ton of fabrication. I have a Cricut, I have laser cutter, I have I have this Masuda CNC. I have multiple 3D printers all over the place. It's to the point where they're actually starting to take up more space than I need them to. But Linus had a really good video discussing a new law that's coming out for 3D printers, and I wanted to react to it. But first, I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe, right? I don't know what that does, but I'm supposed to ask for it to share with you a small portion of my songs. So here's a snippet. Okay, and that should be done. So I'm gonna react now. I love you all. Let's watch.
Should we court controversy or should we go with something safe?
Controversy first.
Let's do it!
Heat up and then cool down.
All right, you already saw the headline for this. New York lawmakers debate background checks for 3D printers. I'm going to let you read the topic, and I'm just going to look at your face. He doesn't know about this yet. He's been completely disconnected this week, just like busy.
So I'm going to say right off the bat that New York is very, as of right now, in my opinion, based off of what I've watched with Louis Rossmann and a lot of other business creators, New York is very anti-business right now. Like, if you want to make money, New York is not the place to go for a startup. If you're old money, right, and if you want to take advantage of a population, New York might be your ball game. But as far as I know, New York is like a bonfire for startups. Not only is it difficult to get started up in, but the second you do get started up on, there's like 50 some odd fees or something to actually continue to run the business. Like, and I'm talking about like just your simple soap making Etsy might result in like multi-million-dollar fines. Like, it is insanely difficult to start up and maintain a business in New York. Just not because of bringing customers in, not because of customer acquisition online or marketing or anything like that. It's literally just the government getting in your way.
Doing other things.
Wild week, yeah.
I am so excited. Let's all watch Luke.
Oh boy, this isn't weird at all. Wow. Pain to me. New York legislators have proposed a bill that would require a criminal background check to buy 3D printers that could be used to print any part of a firearm. This would likely include a vast majority of 3D printers commercially available. Yeah, like pretty much all of them, including relatively cheap FDM printers. According to the bill as written, background checks could take up to 15 business days. Sale of these...
Okay. I hate that they're doing this. They are taking advantage of people's ignorance. As of right now, the vast majority of Americans know of 3D printing, but they don't know how it works. Like, you know how a printer works. You know how a printer works. It splooges ink on a page. So you know how printers work. But do you know how an FDM or a resin printer works? And there's a good chunk of you that'll know which is which and that there's a difference between them. But there's a much bigger portion that does not know either of these. They just know that 3D printing is something about plastic and filament. They may not even know about filament. They may not even know about plastic. Like, it's so far off. And these companies, these legacy companies are taking advantage of that. See, for the longest time, 3D printing wasn't really available. 3D printing has been around since like the 60s, as far as I remember. But it hasn't been until recently that the copyright was lifted on it. Like, if it wasn't for like 2 people out in, I think, Sweden or the Netherlands making a 3D printer that could then print other 3D printers and coming up with their own design and pattern for it, if it wasn't for these two, 3D printing wouldn't really be in the commercial space as far as I understand it. I may be a little bit wrong on the details there, but basically 3D printing has been available for businesses since like the 1960s, but only available for people since like the early 2010s. And legacy companies don't want you to have it. Legacy companies don't want you to have it because it's a production item. It can produce anything you can think up. Think about that. It can produce anything you can think up. Which means, what's the point of companies? Oh, let this single individual get a lot of money because of one singular product they managed to copyright. Okay, what happens when that is distributed amongst the population because people have figured out how 3D printers work and can make their own stuff and come up with their own ideas? I'm not saying everybody will do it, but A good example of this is back when Amazon Kindle came out, right? And the Barnes and Noble. Okay, so those two had a fight, and back then, getting into a publisher's house, getting your book published, was a big deal. You had to go through certain companies, certain agencies. You might have had to build some social connections, but if you did not have a good, thoroughly edited book, well, actually, if you did not have a good book, you basically didn't have a book that people would be able to read. Like, your family might be able to read it, but unless it was in the hands of a publisher house and they were printing it, you weren't previously able to mass produce books because it just wasn't feasible. Because books on a mass scale cost a ton of money. So instead, when these companies, Amazon and Barnes and Noble, started to make a digital format for it, now that tablets came out and you could read stuff on the tablets, even though it was limited at first, people started to self-publish. And the whole justification of it costs a lot of money to produce books suddenly went out the door. And now, if you go and look up a book on practically anything on Amazon, there's tons of them. And the quality is kind of crap. Like, you really gotta research and know what's what to actually get a good Kindle book nowadays. And even though there's no there are publishing houses. You have to build up a reputable name now, much like a publishing house did, because of how many bad quality books there are. So people trust this name, but you're kind of sketchy because you've got one book. So it's it was easy for a little while for self-published authors to produce a book, sell it, and then become basically famous overnight. Nowadays, it's become difficult again because everybody and their brother can do it. Well, that's the thing about 3D printing, and they're worried that's going to happen with 3D printing. They're worried that it's a huge surge that's happening right now with 3D printing. People are going to be able to make whatever they want. There's no limitation, except math. Math is the limitation. And even then, you can have other people do the math for you. So you can make whatever you want, and you don't need to pay ridiculous prices for it. You can make lathe machines with 3D printers. A lathe machine. That's considered like the pinnacle of hard machining, like hand machining. Like, if you can produce a lathe, you can produce dang near every other instrument. And the only bottleneck we have right now is metal printing. That's the only bottleneck we have. If it wasn't for that bottleneck, 3D printers could print everything. If you wanted a spatula, you could just print a spatula. You didn't need to go to the store. You could just print a spatula. You wanted a certain design on your spatula? Well, guess what? You can go to, like, I don't know, one of the many images websites that are out there, and then get your image, go into AutoCAD, and then import the SVG and extrude it so that it's got bumps, right? So that it's, like, embossed. And then you have it on your handle. You have a design on your handle. Or you can print it out and cut it with Cricut, and maybe you have a sticker form or a vinyl form or whatever. Or you could laser etch it with a laser cutter. Like, for roughly, I'm saying roughly, and this depends on zone, for roughly the price of a car, you can have a fabrication shop. My Cricut was $300. The most expensive one was the Bamboo printer, and that was $1,600. Okay, so that's $1,900 right there. My CNC was $600, so that is $2,500 right there. My Epson EcoTank 1500 was $800, so that makes that $3,300. And then the other printer that I use for stickers and stuff cost me $300, so $3,600. I might have that number wrong because my memory's bad, but $3,600 roughly. So that gives you a CNC, a 3D printer, two different print styles, so one for sublimation and another for any other printing need you have, and a die cutter, which is how you cut vinyl and stuff. Those five right there, just a huge swath of apparel and machines and mechanisms and cases, and like there's smaller parts, like there's electronics that you can get to, but those five machines can it's the equivalent of having a factory in your house, basically. And that is scary for legacy companies. Legacy companies who are like, okay, invent a product once every 5 years and sell that, and then continue to produce the same thing over and over. Okay, so we got this one vacuum, Dyson vacuums, right? We got this one vacuum. 5 years later, we're gonna make a few additional features, and we're gonna sell you that vacuum. And then we're gonna add a little bit more features, and then we're gonna sell you an upgraded version of that vacuum. And they just keep doing it and doing it. That's what I mean by legacy company. And there are tons of companies like that. Bissell, like, think about it. How many companies started producing a product and then actually came out with something revolutionary? Think about Mr. Coffee. How long has Mr. Coffee been around? How long has that company been around? You're still doing a filter, putting grounds in, and pouring hot water through it to put it in a pot. That company's been around for what? Almost 100 years at this point, I think, right? $1970s. Okay, so 50 years. 50 years. And it's still the same stuff. 50 years, okay? And what these legacy companies are doing is that they're using the lack of knowledge that the general public has to try and get away with getting rid of your ability to produce whatever you want inside of your own home, because they like the way that business runs right now. They want to slow down the speed at which people are becoming self-sufficient. Because the more people that are self-sufficient, the more distributed the wealth is. They want to be the one company that has access to this technology. They're basically trying to circumvent the copyright system. The copyright system that basically says, oh, now the copyright is up, you can use it because it's general public license. They want to circumvent that. They want to prevent you from producing things. And they're using the gunfight as an excuse to do it.
These 3D printers would be...
Because as Linus is going to point out, Linus and Luke are going to point out, self-made guns are a joke. I mean, they're dangerous, but they're not as, like, you know, they're not all that big, and you might get like 2-3 shots out of it before it becomes unusable. They're not something that's in common production unless you have a metal printer. If you have a metal printer, then you could still do it. But like I said, they're going to point out that this kind of law is dumb. And I fully back them. And I don't think it's about guns. I think it's about limiting production. Making it more expensive for the average consumer to be able to produce whatever they want in their own homes, and to reduce the amount of self-sufficiency that you can be at home. Because a vast majority of companies make their money not on big purchases, but on tiny, cheap things. They make it off of tiny, cheap things. If you're a person who's on the internet for a while, right, and you're used to selling stuff, right, if you're used to looking for bargains, especially from Alibaba and Temu, if you're used to looking at those, you will begin to see a pattern. A lot of Walmart products, that's not food, a lot of Walmart products that you find in store, you'll find on Alibaba and Temu at much cheaper prices. But Walmart takes the most rated items, the ones that people like, and puts them in their store. Now, I'm not gonna say that I know exactly the process, but I know that I've seen products on these websites, and I've seen them in physical stores. And some of these products are so bad. They're so bad. They're so not worth it. And these companies want to get away with this. Could you imagine, instead of paying Walmart for what, like $60 for JBL headphones, you just use what's known as TPU, which is like plastic rubber, to print out headphone holders, like the speaker itself, and the wire. You buy a $2 or $5 speaker with a wire, shove it into the case, pull the wire out, and then use a $10-15 solder iron with like $5 worth of with like maybe a nickel of soldering liquid, and you just solder that to another 3D printed 3mm jack, which costs probably $2. So altogether, you're looking at like maybe it costing $6-7, maybe 15, maybe 20, depending on what you buy. But you made it yourself. You didn't have to go and get some other company for it, and you know it's going to work because you know the components. That's what I'm talking about. Like, with 3D printing, you can make almost everything that you see in a store. And then if you learn electronics, you can make the electronics that go inside of the items. So I got that 3D printer, right? It cost me $1,600. I've not run a business with it. Not yet. I've not run a business with it. I've made that money back. I've made that money back. Every machine that I bought, every 3D printer that I bought, I've made that money back in savings from printing the things with the machine. So, like, I'm looking at a basket that was like a 3 or 4 hour print. That would have probably cost me 30, 40 bucks. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 paint holders that would have probably cost me $20 each. I printed them all out. What did the roll of filament that probably accounts for all of that cost? About 20 bucks. So for every $20, I usually save 100, roughly. And then you've got the fact that I have little hooks around here, and I've got hooks. I have LED lights on my ceiling, so I've got hooks hanging up there. There's just so many things that I have printed. Like, I've got paintbrushes up there, and the thing that's holding the paintbrushes are little cups with a little hook. So it slides in, and the hook gets sandwiched between the MDF board and the frame, so that it, instead of screwing in the holder, it just uses the weight of the shelf to hold it in place. And I've got like 5 holders there that are what, like $10 each at the market. There. Oh, and then I have sorted. Sorry, I'm starting to just ramble on and on. But as you can tell, I have saved a ton of money from just printing out little things that would have cost me more money. And they want to take that away from you, because that means that's less for them to sell to you.
Be prohibited to any user who has a conviction or outstanding warrant for a felony or other serious crime. While many 3D printed guns require at least a few metal parts. Yeah, at least a couple, like a barrel. But anyways, at least a few metal parts for reliability and accuracy. There are some relatively weak printed guns that can be made entirely of plastic or wood. But anyways, let's skip past that. With the exception of the firing.
See, that's another point. This is a huge point right here. Anything that can be made with plastic can be made with wood. You can get some hand carved tools and just hand carve whatever you planned on making in plastic. So 3D printer is pointless. It's pointless because you could do it in wood. And then again, metal barrel. The reason why you need a metal barrel is because of the compressive force that happens whenever the bullet is shot through the barrel. That explosion wants to go all directions, not just forward. It wants to go all directions. So you need a metal barrel to hold it shut as the bullet gets pushed out the front. And that's the only way that you're going to get the bullet to be anywhere near accurate.
Pin. However, I mean, there's ways around that too. However, these guns typically fall apart after only a few uses. Yeah. Okay.
Now, to be clear, okay, look, Luke's not some kind of like 2FA diehard,
no.
like nothing else matters, but also
No.
I think has a pretty realistic view of what kind of legislation could meaningfully impact firearm safety. And it's honestly, it's not the kind of thing that we're going to get into in great detail on the show, even though it's something that we both have thoughts on and have talked to each other about privately. But what I knew for sure is that you were going to get a huge kick out of this, because this will do absolutely nothing.
That is why.
It will serve absolutely no purpose other than to make it inconvenient to get a 3D printer, and probably only marginally so.
Luke, Mythbusters wood can.
Do you remember, at the beginning of my rant, when I said that there were 2 individuals who built a 3D printer for the purposes of making a 3D printer? They built it, as in they had, like, supplies to just build it. As in they made it by hand. Like, these are just 2 people in their houses that came up with the idea of a 3D printer that can print other 3D printers. That is how easy it is to actually get your hands on a 3D printer. These were locally sourced parts that if you had the know-how, you could put them together. As in, you literally physically are only stopping the people who do not have a good understanding of mechanical engineering. That's who you're stopping. Oh, and who don't realize that there are books on how to build a 3D printer without buying one.
Cannon. Look up the recent assassination of the Japanese.
Look, a handheld flippin' crossbow is in a lot of ways more dangerous than a firearm because of how stealthily it can be used. Those are super illegal here, but you can...
I'm actually kind of surprised that crossbows are illegal. That kind of surprised me. Because it's like it's a medieval weapon. You wouldn't think that would be like something... You would think that'd be like not... I mean, does that mean that swords are illegal? Like, we're talking about a medieval weapon. And don't get me wrong, yes, they can be used to assassinate, but like... It's just, in my head, I can't fathom why... I can't fathom crossbows. Like, if you have a legal right to use a firearm, why is a crossbow on your banned list? Like, what's the purpose of that?
Totally make one without a 3D printer. Like, it's bizarre to me that they are basically, it's like...
Legit, you can make it. It might be temporary, right? I'm not saying I'm an expert on crossbow making, but a crossbow is wood nailed into other wood with metal thing on top that do bendy, with a string, with a latch mechanism that you just pull back, set a two-prong latch mechanism, and then you got an arrow that goes in the middle, and then you can just fire it. Like, I'm sorry, but there's unless you ban trees, there's no way to stop that. Well, okay, there's okay, because you can make it you can make it fully out of wood. It doesn't go nearly as far as the metal one, but you can make it fully out of wood instead of having that weird metal bar thing, and then it'll fire all the same. You would literally have to ban wood, and you can't do that because then people won't have buildings, and it's just this whole thing is incredibly stupid and incredibly bold that they think they can do this.
Banning scissors and tape. Like, I'm sorry, you can't have tape because you might use it to bind somebody. Sure, you could, and no, this is not one of those, what's it called, a straw man argument or whatever?
Yeah,
I forget the exact thing.
Or single-shot shotguns with metal pipes. Yeah, this is my point. Like,
yeah, I'm not taking this to an absurd level just to demonstrate that this is a slippery slope or anything. This is actually ridiculous.
If you want to make stuff, you can make stuff. You don't need a 3D printer.
You can fire a bullet without a gun.
Yeah.
You literally don't even need one. I know this from experience. Don't worry about it.
Look up a potato gun. Look up a potato gun. Those can injure people because they don't have to be a potato that it fires. Do you think that the tribes in the forests use guns? No. They use mouth darts. That's their thing. They use mouth darts. So and a mouth dart can contain enough poison to kill an entire platoon. So, like, there's so many different holes, and this is no offense, but this is what happens whenever you have leftist sensibilities and things. Because if you take the logical point that they're trying to make and you blow it up to its big prophetic size, it becomes ridiculous. We need to ban guns for safety. Okay, well then that means if you really want to ban guns, you got to ban the things that make the guns. And you can't ban those because then we don't have civilization. You cannot ever fully ban guns. It is impossible unless you're okay with doing away with society. You have to do away with any form of making to get rid of a gun. And this is a leftist sensibility. Like, let's take away the thing that defends people who want to follow the laws and let the criminals just have it all. Like, listen, if they're clever enough to figure out meth, they're clever enough to figure out 3D printing.
Not accurately, mind you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so... I mean, someone chat, CNC machines. Yeah, like what? Where, this
Why
is
don't you ban bleach and ammonia because they can be used to make mustard gas?
Styrofoam.
Or gasoline and styrofoam.
Yeah, like I just...
Sorry, fellow anarchist cookbook reader?
Just fell into the exact same...
These are people who live in ivory towers who do not understand the basic needs of survival. They don't understand how the basic core things are done. They just understand that they tell people to get it done, and those people get it done for them because they have so much freaking money that they don't ever have to worry about the basic person who's trying to be a business leader, who's trying to be the next politician. They are the people who receive thousands of dollars every month, okay, and don't have to worry about anything. These are the people who don't have struggle in their lives. Because if they did, they wouldn't be making this type of law. There is so many things wrong with this.
Same one at the same time. Nice. Yeah, like I don't know. You can't. It's literally just going to be annoying to people that want 3D printers.
And realistically, okay, actually, I'm glad that you brought up the anarchist cookbook because
I did.
The only
it's just literally not what happened.
Yeah, well, you know, it's got all kinds of instructions for how to do things with fuel. I used gaslighting.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm glad you.
I thought it was pretty good.
I'm glad you brought up the Anarchist Cookbook because
sure.
The only reason that I ever downloaded it, the only reason I even became aware of it was because someone tried to ban it at some point when I was in high school.
Me too. I bet you we did. We probably downloaded the same file and very likely same day.
So it's pretty much just your classic Streisand effect, right?
Yeah.
All this talk about 3D printing guns. I'm not saying that it's going to change anything. Eventually, 3D printed guns will proliferate. They will be absolutely everywhere. You will be able to 3D print a sophisticated weapon with...
Like I said, the second that we're able to print metal, the 3D printed guns will be everywhere. And they'll be inside the house. You won't be able to assemble them. If somebody reports you, then you'll be reported. But otherwise, you'll be able to have one in your house because you can print it. Now, will people print it? No. Like there are legitimate reasons why people don't want guns, but that doesn't mean that the ability is going to go away. Like, and then you have the logistics around trying to ban people from making it. And that would mean that manufacturers who make motherboards. So manufacturers who make motherboards and slicers would have to somehow code all the different ways you can make an explosive device. And that's impossible. That's impossible. There's so many different ways that you can make an explosive device, which is how a bullet is propelled. I think I'm going to end it there. I did watch this beforehand. This was the main section that I wanted to react to. Linus is a fantastic creator. I've watched him for years, mostly for tech. I was actually really surprised that I stumbled across this. But this is how bad it's getting. Is Canadians wondering why the New York lawmakers are trying to get their hands on banning more technology that allows for building. And like I said, I think it's because they don't want you to have the ability of production. Because if you have the ability of production, you can't be shoved into poor communities, which means you are not probably going to vote for them the next time election comes around. Because usually it's the super wealthy that did not earn their wealth and the poor that vote Democrat. That's been my experience. And I know that might infuriate some of you. Go ahead. Tell me how much it infuriates you. And tell me why I'm wrong. I would love to hear another side of that argument, because as far as I know, those are usually the people who vote Democrat, is the people on welfare, who do not pay attention to politics, and the people who are super wealthy that, find a reason to be offended by everything. But like I said, I'm here to learn. I'm here to react, to understand, and if you have any problem with anything that I said, or if you have an opinion on the thing that I've said, and just talk to me down in the comments. I want to see how pissed off I can make you. But yeah, I suppose I'll see you in another video.